Hey everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy, and I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. I'm recording this at midnight. Mabel is growling at something outside, so if you hear growls in the background, that's what that is. And what a wonderful episode today. This is Patrick Stickles. If you don't know who he is, let me read you his bio very quickly. Originally from Glen Rock, New Jersey, musician Patrick Stickles started Titus Andronicus in 2005. Since then, the band has garnered a great deal of critical praise and commercial success. Their first 3 albums were released on Trouble Man and XL, but starting with The Most Lamentable Tragedy, they've been part of Merge Records. Side note, one of my favorite record labels. Their latest album, An Obelisk, was just released this past June, and it is wonderful. Patrick was in Los Angeles to do a couple Titus Andronicus shows, and he stopped by. We had a very wide-ranging discussion about his childhood. Patrick has ADD, and he was started on Ritalin very early. We talk about how that's affected him and about a ton of other things. He's a cool guy, so I hope you enjoyed this episode. By the way, if you do, and you want to check out other episodes, all of them are available for you on Spotify, or you can download them at beginnings.libsyn.com. Now, I've been doing this show for almost 10 years, so maybe you just want me to recommend some people that have been on the show instead of having to comb through the back catalog. Now, maybe you're here because Patrick's in a band, and you'd like to know other musicians that have been on the show. Why, tons. Tim Kinsella, Tim Kasher, Matt Pryor of the Get Up Kids, Scott Camberg from Pavement, Carl Newman, Wes Miles of Rah Rah Riot, Parquet Courts, Nick Thorburn, Antarctigo Vespucci was on an episode, Sadie Dupuis of Speedy Ortiz, Colin Newman from Wire, and a ton of other actors, writers, performers, artists. If you like what you hear and you want to subscribe to the show, you can do that on Apple Podcasts, on Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, probably a bunch of other places. I'm on social media at Andy Beckerman. And stay tuned. A lot of great episodes coming up, including Magdalene Visaggio, the wonderful comic book writer, Michael Cronin, Larry Hankin. I just talked to him yesterday. You may know, he's a character actor, has been working for, 40, 50 years. He started in Greenwich Village, opening for, he was a contemporary of like Lenny Bruce. You might know him as Mr. Heckles on Friends, but you've seen him on probably almost every sitcom. Anyway, Mabel is freaking out, so I better go care for her. So without any further ado, here's Patrick. So I know a little bit.
Shades for this?
Do you want to?
Is this? Part is this part of the show?
It can be.
Could be.
It could be. If I find this part important,
right?
That to the next hour.
The part about how I just put my sunglasses on.
You were strumming Poison on my guitar.
I was
a couple minutes ago
because it's L.A.
Are they from L.A.? See, I don't.
They're all from L.A., but none of them are. They moved to L.A. to chase their rock and roll dreams on the Sunset Strip. To
play at the Viper Room?
I think they were playing at like the Whiskey A Go-Go at this time. Viper Room was like Keanu Reeves, right? Or Johnny Depp?
Isn't River Phoenix, isn't that where he hung out?
Could be.
See,
I don't know
that part
much
of
about this Hollywood stuff.
that part of rock and roll, because when I was a kid, there was something like it didn't mirror my soul in any way.
No.
As a goofy weird kid,
Right.
So I was just
couldn't relate to the decadent rock stars.
yeah. It's like all that stuff scared me, so I stayed away from it. I'm just like, I'll just listen to Weird Al and the Monkees over here.
Weird Al is more similar to Real Life Friend.
But wait, when you were a kid, is that what you listened to?
Motley Crue, or what did I say? Poison?
Warrant, Rat.
No, I didn't. It wasn't until years later that I found out about hair metal, which is not my favorite, to be clear.
Mm-hmm.
We did listen to a bunch of it in the van today at the behest of Chris, the drummer, who was driving. In the Titus Andronicus van, the driver gets to select the music.
Sure.
That's a policy we call driver's delight. Because we're going into L.A., he chose a bunch of L.A. hair metal bands to listen to.
By the way,
such as Rat, Motley Crue,
right.
Poison,
the sunglasses
Faster Pussycat.
Do really make you look Hollywood. Like sitting here talking to you.
Really?
Yeah.
I was going for more of like a Lou Reed thing. He would always use his sunglasses to, alienate and antagonize the poor journalists who would fall in his path of destruction.
Do you like that? I mean, is there any part of that where you're like the idea of like the mythos of like someone like that who's like or someone who wants to put up barriers and create a mythos for themselves seems like a lot of work to me.
Do I like it when people do that?
Yeah, or yourself, or do you feel like there's anything worthwhile about that? It like turns me off sometimes when I hear like a rock star or movie star like is purposely creating some kind of obfuscation to like so they don't like talk about themselves. Does that make sense?
I guess so. I mean, some people have accused me of putting an overly high barrier to entry as far as getting into Titus Andronicus music by putting out like 93-minute rock operas and things like that. I don't necessarily want to antagonize journalists in the way that Lou Reed did, but I do want the audience to meet me on my terms.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I do. I mean, I was a huge fan of Pavement. I mean, still am. But like when I was making music 15 years ago, I found that when I was writing lyrics that were very like obtuse or very opaque, that I was doing it because I couldn't actually talk about real things.
Right. It was kind of an emotional camouflage.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, irony is often that.
Yeah.
I don't care for that kind of thing very much myself.
Yeah. I don't get that from
people can do it if they want, but that's not what I choose to do. And because I am so transparent and vulnerable in the subject matter of my music, this is another reason why I'm more comfortable if the audience meets me a little more than halfway.
Yeah,
I'm demanding.
See, that's different. That's being demanding and saying like, "Hey, this is who I am, and I'm asking you to come over to my side of the emotional and conceptual park."
Right.
If we need now,
that's where I hang out.
That's different from someone who's just like, I don't want you to know. I don't want you to be able to pinpoint where I am.
Right, like Nirvana.
Yeah, and so
or REM.
Yeah,
they're not funny necessarily.
No,
Nirvana was low key funny at times, but emotional obfuscation, yeah, not my bag personally.
I get from the
others would like to do it.
From talking to you before we started recording, I get like a dry feeling, like you told a Borscht Belty kind of joke.
That joke was dope.
I didn't say it wasn't funny. I just said
great.
It was. I said dry.
It was dry. I don't know. Was it?
Catskillsy.
Yeah. Okay. Is it dry? I don't know. It's not soaking wet. What do these words mean?
Yeah, we are talking in metaphors.
We're talking about words that float through the air. They're neither wet nor dry. Or if we say that dry is the absence of moisture, then yeah, they are dry. I don't know. My breath. It's a lot of oxygen in there. That's a building block of water.
Well, I mean...
I don't know. I think of them more as like sound waves. neither wet nor dry, although sound waves travel more effectively in water. Water's a really good conduit for sound.
I mean,
that's why you don't want to get too close to a blue whale when it begins to bellow. Those things push like 130 decibels or something. I'd love to have an amplifier that loud someday. The blue whale's the loudest sound.
Is that true?
Yeah. But the loudest sound ever recorded, it was like some asteroid hitting the Earth or something. That shit was loud. It knocked down trees for like 50 miles around. I wish I could remember where this
are you talking about the one in Russia in like the early 1900s?
Something like that, yeah. Loud. I love that. I love it loud. I got big amplifiers. Feels so good. It's awesome.
Wait, what about loud? What about the loudness? As the older I get, the more I can't. Loudness is more of a function of the fact that I can't hear anymore.
Right. Well, that's part of it for me. What used to be really loud when I started out in the rock business doesn't seem so loud anymore. But that's fine. I've just gotten more and bigger amplifiers as the years have gone by. And this is how I keep, the outside world as loud as it is on the inside. People say to me, how come you don't want to wear earplugs on stage or at rehearsal? Like, aren't you worried about your ears? And I'm like, I'm more worried about the interior sound of my psyche. As long as it's louder than that, that's what I'm after. I love it. Big amplifiers. Music, it's the most confrontational of the art forms. Like a literature, you have to choose to take a book off the shelf, or a painting, like you have to turn your head to look at it. Music, you don't often get to choose if you hear it or not. You know what I'm saying? Because
it's so ubiquitous in such a way that like you could be at the supermarket and music's playing.
I just mean, like, imagine I have a record player or something in this room, or like when I was playing your guitar before, you couldn't help but hear me do it. You know what I'm saying? If I said like, hey, I made a drawing, or like, hey, buddy, I wrote a little poem, how about you read it? Like, I can't make you, you know what I mean? But I made you hear the music whether you wanted it or not.
Well,
You're a nice guy, so I didn't think you would be mad.
I wasn't.
I didn't ask permission before I picked up the guitar. That was pretty presumptuous. I've got some nerve, can I tell you?
No, but like there's something else about music too, where it's not just like it's confrontational in that way, but it's the easiest way to hijack someone's emotions.
Right.
So you're not. It's not only that you're just like confronting them with something. You're also like kind of manipulating their brain in a way.
Yeah. Well, Nietzsche said that music is the greatest art form because it's non-representational, in the way that like a painting of a chair, like that's a representation of a chair. So you can kind of, judge it based on how much it makes you think that you're looking at a real chair. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Music is not this way. Music doesn't represent anything. It just is itself. So it's weird, though, when you start introducing lyrics into music, even though Nietzsche's best buddy Wagner did that often, because then music becomes like both the non-representational art form, but also like a kind of representation of the subject matter of this song. It's a hell of an art form, can I tell you? Very powerful. I dig it. I like making it.
Did you study philosophy?
I have a minor in it, yeah, from school days. Had a lot of good that did me. You can get plenty of jobs with one of those.
But I have a master's in it, so.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly working in that field.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any master's degrees myself. This is just an undergraduate degree. And it took me I had to get like 16 credits or something. It was no big deal to get this minor. Basically knocked it out in one semester. It's no problem. My big degree is in literature. Also a pretty useless degree. Oh, well.
Well, I mean, not useless. Like, I find it's not useless in the sense that it's like a worthwhile thing to have. It's just useless in an economic sense.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Obviously, I like it. I mean, I use it at my job, but this is like one of the only jobs where you could use it.
Well, but it always bothered me.
I can't get fired, and I didn't have to do an interview with myself to get the job. I had to do an interview with the record company to work for them, I suppose.
You had to do an interview right now?
Yeah, that's true, but like you can't fire me. You can't tell me that I'm not the lead singer and president for life of Titus Andronicus LLC anymore. Only I have the power to do that. Or the government could come along and say the business has to be shuttered for some reason.
Do you think they'll say it bothered me the idea because other people said it, especially when I was studying philosophy. They're like, well, that's a worthless degree, or what are you going to do with that? Work at a Walmart? As if that's a undignified job or something. Anyway,
right? These fucking snobs, bougie bastards.
But
scoffing at the working person, that's gross.
The idea that you have to do something that has a purely capitalistic economic value, and if you're not, then it's useless.
Yeah, that's true. The only real virtue in society's eyes is, the potential to generate revenue and then to continually grow beyond, any kind of sane limitation. What a sick society, this capitalism, and the way that it protects itself with white supremacy and misogyny and all these awful things. Like, God, how dare they? Squeezing out the middle class. It's fucked up. I'll tell you something else. On this trip that we've been on, I'm struck more and more by how many homeless people are out there across America. I feel like every time I go out, the more and more people are on the streets, and they're having a tough time, and some of them appear to be hooked on drugs of some sort. Not all of them, obviously, but these people are having a tough time is the bottom line, and nobody's taking care of them, and we're the wealthiest society in the world, and indeed in history. But goddamn, that centrifugal force of capitalism, it just consolidated all the wealth and equity onto a progressively smaller base. And now we don't have the resources to help these poor homeless people because the billionaires would rather just sit on it and hoard it. And they're squeezing out the middle class as well, of which I once hoped to be a participant. And now it doesn't exist anymore. So
yeah,
it's fucked up. At times it seems like the end game of capitalism is like some kind of form of modern serfdom where, these oligarchs are going to live on the 99th floor of the ivory tower and the rest of us are going to be in one of these tent encampments that I passed on the way over here. That sucks. That ain't fair. And I'll tell you what else. We were up in Vancouver. The club we played was basically on Skid Row. Like all these people, everywhere, like a mob of them for blocks and blocks, and they're hanging out on the street smoking crack, literally, and they live there. And what the fuck? This is Canada, for God's sakes. Y'all, they're supposed to be civilized socialists, and yet they're leaving these people to just rot on the street. Capitalism, failing to participate in it in an effective way is basically punishable by death in this society of ours. That ain't right. That's fucked up. Makes me upset.
Yeah.
I'm mad.
I mean, I think a lot about when I was a kid, the dreams that I had when I was a kid that I still have now, what I wanted to be. Society changed around me and made it very difficult for me to realize those dreams.
Whoa.
Here's a dumb example of this stuff, which is I use this as a kind of metaphor. Basically, I grew up in Pennsylvania, and both my parents worked, and they're not good cooks really. So dinner was always quick. It was always boiled vegetables or meatloaf or Weaver chicken nuggets. No shade to them. That's just it was, right?
That's food.
And now that I'm an adult, though, and I can eat whatever I want, and I'm expanding my palate, it's very difficult to learn to like other foods. I've been a vegetarian for about 15 years, and I've only recently started really expanding my palate.
Right.
Because the thing that formed in my brain and in my taste buds was a love of Weaver chicken nuggets.
There you go.
Right.
Familiar.
It's the same thing existentially, where it's just I wanted to be part of the middle class and own a house. Maybe. I don't know. I don't even know if I really wanted that, but I definitely the dreams that I had to do comedy in some way as a kid. As society changes, it makes that stuff a lot more difficult.
Yes. Harder to get paid a living wage telling jokes nowadays or singing.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, did you have a specific dream when you were a kid, something you wanted to do?
Just be an artist of some kind, basically. There were at different points in my life I was most interested in different art forms. So maybe when I was a little tiny baby, I wanted to like draw a comic book. And then maybe when I was a little older, I was like, I'll make a regular novel instead without pictures. Or maybe I said I'll make a movie of some kind. Practice doing it by casting my action figures in a low-budget movie that I make in my house. Or draw my own comic books and Xerox them to sell to the kids at school. And then, when I got to be a teenager, I was like, maybe music is a good art form for me. And here I am doing it and talking about it. I'm a musician.
I mean, is that a weird thing to say? Like, it's a weird thing for me to say I'm a writer. It feels weird to say that to people.
And yet you write.
Yes. And yet that's what I do.
Yes.
And I make money doing that.
There you go, professional writer.
And, well, I mean, as a freelancer, you cobble together. I make money as a podcaster and voiceover and other things. But, like, did you grow up middle class?
You could say that, yeah. My parents had plenty of money. It's no problem.
In Glen Rock, right?
Glen Rock, yeah. Not as rich as some of the neighboring towns, but definitely better off than some of the other neighboring towns. I
kind of know that area. My aunt lived around there, like Bergen County, right?
Yeah.
Like Passaic, I think she lived in for a little while.
Passaic
or Patterson.
Patterson is significantly more economically depressed than the town I'm from, which is not economically depressed at all. Fucking sucks. It's another example, Patterson, that used to be the number one silk exporter in America. Silk City, they called it. But then one day, for some reason, the silk industry just kind of folded up and another industry never did come along to replace it. And now it's severely blighted. Terrible. And the people there are like basically abandoned by the system. Real fucking Ebenezer Scrooge vibes. What happened to that poor city. And they got those beautiful waterfalls. Fuck. But yeah, my family, we were doing better than the people in Patterson as far as the money goes. For a very quite comfortable upbringing I had, I must admit.
What'd your parents do for a living?
My father was a lawyer, and my mother worked in the high school, not the high school in my town, but in a town called Emerson. And she was what we call a student assistance counselor. You ever heard of these people?
Maybe.
Basically like a guidance counselor in a lot of ways, but didn't really do much as far as the scheduling of the classes or, preparing to make college applications or whatever. She was only invested in the feelings of the students. Trauma and drama. That's what she said her field was when she was working with the kids. She's retired now. And so, therefore, it falls to me to talk to the kids about their feelings through my music. How about that? And
do you really think that?
Yeah, of course I do. And my mother taught me everything that I know about validating my own feelings, and that's what I try to do for the audience. And in so validating them, they in turn validate me. I pour my heart out on the stage, and I see them responding to it, and I know that I'm articulating things from their own heart and validating things in their lives that they're maybe not otherwise getting validated about, and that makes me feel like a success. They feel a little bit less alone knowing that I feel a similar way, and guess what? Wouldn't you know it, noticing that they feel similarly, I too am validated, and I feel less alone. It's fucking sick. It's dope.
So,
but wait, I can't go on without shouting out my stepmother, Vicky. She was taught in the schools as well. And then she not only taught second and third grade for many years, but eventually she transitioned into being the special needs expert for the entire district. So she would she still does go from school to school and help the kids that have the most special needs. What could be more noble than that? Nothing in the world. And you know what else she did? She led the teachers union to go on strike because she was fed up that the Board of Ed wouldn't give them a contract. So she had them all walk out. She was the leader. She was on the front page of the paper, and she won. And now the teachers do have a contract. How about that? My stepmother, Vicky Stickles, what a woman. Thank God for her. She was probably raising me being like, there's kids out there that have special needs. because my needs were pretty fucking special. He said, doing the air quotes for you listeners at home.
What do you mean? Wait, what do you mean by special?
Because I was just a total freak. You know what I'm saying? I was troubled. I was a young nut job. Straight up.
Wait,
they had
how?
to send me to a special school. I don't know. I wasn't hardly around. You know what I'm saying? I don't have many memories of that time, but couldn't hack it in the regular public school. We found that out the second time I tried to do pre-K. And so they were like, this kid ain't got the stuff. We got to send him off to kindergarten at this special school.
Wait, so already in kindergarten?
Put me on Ritalin. Yeah.
Oh, shit. What?
ADD, they called it. Was that really what was going on? Hard to say. Putting young kids on drugs, I don't know about that. But it was the late 80s, early 90s. You know, my parents were doing their best. I ain't mad. I love them.
Wait, so that's
I
the
wouldn't
thing.
put my kid on Ritalin at that age.
Yeah, that's crazy to me.
I ain't mad. You know what I'm saying? I love my mother and father.
Sure. You're like a couple years younger than me. And I think I missed, like, I was too old by the time people were already giving their kids Ritalin.
Yeah.
Even though I was kind of a hyper weird kid.
You turned out okay.
I think I did. But I think maybe if I had been born like 5 years later, I think I would have been someone they put on Ritalin.
It was a very trendy thing at that time. It seemed to, fix everything in a way. And indeed, like I crushed it at the special school. I crushed it so hard that they would trot me out in front of the Board of Education and be like, check out this kid. Like this kid was blowing it at the regular school, and now he's like thriving and he's an academic superstar. But I was juicing, you know what I mean? I was on performance-enhancing drugs. Makes you wonder.
Wait,
Always
so
will wonder how life would have turned out had I never started doing drugs.
wait, so you were in pre-K and you were what, hyper or something like that?
I guess. Just couldn't cut it is the bottom line. I don't really know what I did exactly to get me in so much trouble, but I obviously was not a model student, and the kind of school I was in just wasn't working for me. It wasn't suiting my particular needs. But I went back to public school when I got to be in the second grade. But I was older than the other kids because I had to go to pre-K twice. Should have graduated from high school in 2003, but I graduated in 2004. That's fine with me. I didn't care too much for the people in the class of 2003. I thought that the kids in my new grade, the class of 2004, they were cool. Shout out to all those buddies from back then. Glen Rock High School. What's up, fellas? You know who you are. Love them.
So wait, so you were only at this special school for like 2 years. What was it? What was like special about it? Just dealt with kids.
The kids had learning disabilities is the bottom line. They had ADD or they were autistic or something. Like we didn't hardly have the language to talk about what was going on with these kids at that time. And I was one of them. And, there were some false equivalencies drawn between these various learning disabilities. I got sent off to some summer camp with people that had, really severe learning disabilities, and nothing against these people, wonderful hearted people, you know what I'm saying, that have all kinds of learning disabilities, but my particular thing, I don't think a little bit different. We didn't know what we were doing in those days. The 80s, difficult decade for the so-called mentally ill, those that I call the neurodiverse.
Right.
Ronald Reagan shutting down all the institutions and stuff, casting the so-called mentally ill out into the cold. Fucking sucks.
Well, speaking of the homeless problem now, I mean, the roots of it are in Ronald Reagan. It's Morning in America.
It's a crisis.
Yeah, it really is. It's not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but in Los Angeles specifically, it's disgusting how the city has just said fuck off to homeless people.
Yeah, drop dead.
If
they're going to die, they better do it and decrease the surplus population. There's Ebenezer Scrooge again. Bah humbug.
Just in the 2 years I've lived here, I've seen tent cities sprout up.
Sorry, buddy. I spilled that nice water you gave me.
It's 100% cool.
After I asked for a coaster and everything, I thought I was going to crush the water situation in here.
It's fine. It's all fake wood. It doesn't matter.
All right. I won't knock on any of it for good luck then.
There's wood bits in it. You can knock on it for
wood adjacent substance, wood product.
You'll get like part luck. But like in the 2 years I've been here so far, I mean, Hoovervilles have sprouted up under every overpass, every corner. When I'm walking
passed
Mabel
one on the
now,
way over here.
Yeah, when I'm walking Mabel at night, more and more do I see people sleeping on every corner.
Right.
I don't mean that like hyperbolically. I mean literally every corner.
Every damn corner. It wasn't always this way here in America. Gets worse every year.
So in some way, you're a casualty of the 80s of like people just lumping in everyone together under a broad label mentally ill without having any kind of understanding of neurodiversity
Yeah.
or any kind of like any kind of idea of like a spectrum of possible ways your brain can be.
Right.
They just label everyone deficient in some way.
Hey, I don't want to turn this into some big sob story. I've had a pretty lucky and blessed life, but there's a lot of people on this spectrum of neurodiversity have had a harder go of it than me. But it hasn't always been a blast.
Yeah.
Not to cry about it. I'm grateful for my many blessings. Don't get it twisted. But yeah, like I said, I am gonna always wonder, did I take the drugs because I was crazy, or am I crazy because I took all those drugs? And that goes along for all the other drugs that doctors have given me over the years and all the drugs that I got illicitly. Who knows? Whatever, it's all good.
So, I mean, you were taking Ritalin from like age 6, something like that, 5?
4 or 5 or 6, something like that. Yeah, it's all very fuzzy era,
When do your like memories start really forming? If that's all fuzzy, like
I have some memories from that time, but like I couldn't fill a book with them. You know what I'm saying? I would have a tough time even writing the first chapter of James Joyce's Portrait of the Artist. But I do. I mean, I remember being at that school, that special school I mentioned.
What was it? I mean, what made it special? What was it like?
It was special because it served kids with special needs, kids that needed a higher degree of special education. Short bus kids, and I can say that because I was one.
I mean, are you getting more attention there? Is that
the class sizes were way smaller, and the teachers were trained in dealing with these kids that weren't fitting snugly into the regular school system. So, and they had psychiatric and psychological professionals around and stuff like that, as well as a padded cell where they would lock the kids when they got out of hand. That's weird.
Huh.
That'll stick with you if you ever get locked in there, let me tell you.
I mean, it seems like horrifying.
It's a little weird. It's something else. But, like I say, it was a different time. Not that we're treating the neurodiverse that awesome now. Matter of fact, I reckon that pretty soon that president of ours, not to talk about him all day, but, I got a feeling he's going to start rounding us up and putting us in camps too, if it comes down to that, or taking away people's assault weapons. They'd rather, make being, observably on the neurodiversity spectrum a crime than, to say that being a white supremacist domestic terrorist is not okay. That's weird. Those priorities seem a little bit out of order to me, but I don't know. I do not know. I'm not looking forward to that day when they start rounding up the so-called mentally ill.
Well,
and I'm going to be in trouble because I tell everybody.
That's next on the list.
You go, I mean, it's probably a few notches down as far as people they're going to round up. But they're going to round up everybody sooner or later.
Well, they got immigrants now. They're looking at homeless next.
Yeah.
So
it's scary.
And because the Venn diagram of homeless and mentally ill has a nice overlap.
Yes, very significant. But that's another one of them chicken or the egg scenarios. Like, are these people out on the street because they're crazy, or are they crazy because they've been out on the street for so many years? How stable do you think you would be after a couple of years living on the street and sleeping on the sidewalk? I bet I wouldn't be doing too great. I reckon, and you can even blame these people for getting hooked on junk and like wanting to escape into like an opioid dreamland.
No,
like that's what I would frickin' do if I had to live like that. Who wouldn't want to escape? I would. It's fucked up.
When you were a kid, was there a stigma attached to this? Like when you were at the special school and then you said in second grade you went back to public school.
Yeah, and everybody knew where I came from, and no, I wasn't extra popular because of it. No. I still had to take the drugs at the regular school. Ritalin, I mean. Whatever.
I mean, how
So
long
maybe
did you?
I did.
How long did you take Ritalin? What does Ritalin do to you? Like specifically to you?
Ritalin is like basically speed. You know what I mean? Like college kids gobble these things and sniff them up to get high and party. You know what I'm saying? So like to, being a little kid, like, you get really jacked up. And as a matter of fact, I can remember the first time that I had a concept that there was such a thing as getting high, which was the night of the MTV Video Music Awards. Some years ago when I was like 12 or 13. Fatboy Slim had the Praise You song out at that time. Remember the video where Spike Jonze and them are in the community dance troupe? I just somehow got some Ritalin and I popped one of them. And I'm watching Fatboy Slim perform at these video awards and I'm like, I feel incredible. I'm walking on a cloud right now. Like I wish I could feel this way all the time. Very, very fucking slippery slope, can I tell you? And I certainly have devoted a good chunk of my life to trying to feel good all the time. It's not realistic. And that's not equivalent to mental health, which some people don't seem to understand. You can't feel good all the time. It's not natural. It'd be nice to feel good some of the time, which I do.
Yeah.
I have fun. I laugh. I'm pretty pissed.
I mean, was it just Ritalin? Was there like any kind of therapy involved in this?
Oh yeah,
or?
They took me to a bunch of different kinds of therapists and all sorts of doctors, and this went on for my whole youth. You know what I'm saying? And they put me on a bunch of stuff, and I kept staying on the stuff. I'm still on stuff. I'm gonna take them anticonvulsants now, which is cool. I like taking the anticonvulsants. Helps me to not have my episodes. Helps me to lead a more stable, reliable life.
Mm-hmm.
Used to think that living your life in the middle would be pretty lame. And indeed, like if I follow through on my commitment to never have any more manic episodes, like that means, sadly enough, that like my moments of most ecstatic happiness are probably behind me. Makes me sad. It was so fun having a major manic episode and you're just like crushing it around the clock and everything is a blast. It's sick. Like no drug can compete with that. And my brain used to be able to just do it naturally. Isn't that something? But of course, major manic episodes invariably end up being pretty destructive. So wrote myself a nice little 93-minute rock opera as a reminder to myself to stick with the no manic episode thing. And the anticonvulsants are really helping me to achieve that. And consequently, I've recently discovered that, hey, if I don't happen to have any of these ecstatically fun but dangerous major manic episodes, then it seems that I don't hit the inevitable wall that comes at the end of these, and so thusly I have not plummeted into a major depressive episode. So that's cool.
So
spent a lot of my life, ricocheting between the poles,
Even as a child?
Bipolarity. Well, as is the case for a lot of bipolar people, my real symptoms of that particular condition didn't really manifest themselves until my mid-20s. But by that point, I had been on that Lexapro for several years, another performance-enhancing drug I used to make my most celebrated albums. Well, guess what? I didn't appreciate my bipolarity at that time, and no doctor had really quite snuffed it out. So it's not good to take SSRIs if you're bipolar. I have since learned. So who knows? Maybe, it's like I say, you're never going to know if it was the chicken or the egg that came first with this kind of stuff. But I've come to, a certain understanding of the things that I need to do to stay on the level and not flip my wig. And that's fine. You know what I'm saying? It's not so bad this way. What do I need to be ecstatically happy for? I'm 34 years old. Get real. I'm lucky that I get to be happy at all. What do I think? That people are walking around happy all the time? That's ridiculous. That's an illusion. People don't live that way. They're miserable. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation, Henry David Thoreau once said, and I would say that applies to women and non-binary people as well. So what? Do I think I'm better than them? I'm not. I'm worse. It's fine. I'm perfectly happy. I'm having a blast. I'm out in L.A. I'm doing a podcast. And rock the house tomorrow night at the concert.
But wait,
I'm
when
in California and people are going to pay to hear me sing, and I'm going to sit around complaining I got the life of Riley.
First of all, you're allowed. This is the thing. When I first started therapy, I was like, I shouldn't complain about my life because there are weddings in Yemen that are being drone bombed and people are being,
Yes,
and my therapist is like, that's true, but it's also true that you have your own problems, and your problems, it's okay to figure out your problems, because not figuring out your problems isn't going to stop people in Yemen being drone bombed.
That is true. It's good to, keep things in perspective to a certain degree, but you're absolutely right that you have to be the one to do the work of validating yourself. And also, nobody can ever, map the landscape of another person's mind. Like, we never really know one another's pain or their perspective. So, like, who's to say? Like, maybe you are hurting really bad inside, even if everything on the outside seems to be just hunky-dory. That's one of them another crazy thing about, being prone to depressive episodes. Because on the outside, it seems like everything's fine. Like when I had, my first major depressive episode, I was coming off my greatest artistic success and gearing up to make my much-anticipated follow-up album. And I had a great bunch of musicians helping me out. And, it didn't make me happy somehow. Fuck, that sucked. That was a rough time. But that gave me a lot of perspective also. Had to have a few more episodes before I got to my current level of perspective, and I suppose I probably still have got a lot to learn, but that doesn't make me different from anybody else either. Life is just a process of assessing and reassessing, and like your lovely wife said, you got to respect the journey, even if that journey meant me washing my hands in your lovely bathroom. I'm sorry, are we not supposed to disclose that we're in your home?
No.
Your listeners know that.
Everyone knows, yeah.
Yeah. And you and your wife host that adorable stand-up show together, so this is no secret.
How did you get out of, you said you had a depressive episode, then you had a number of others. Like, how did you get through that and out of it to the other side to have some perspective? Because I've noticed when loved ones of mine have had depressive episodes, it's very difficult for them to have any perspective on what's going on.
Right, absolutely. A lot of it is just time. You know what I'm saying? You got to put the time in. And this is like the big takeaway I've had from, having these awful episodes is that, life really is just a sequence of moments. And every moment has got one thing in common, which is that they all are temporary. They're transient states, that we occupy at any given time. So, like, when I was having my major depressive episode, obviously I was thinking, like, this is how I feel from now on. Like, this is my new reality, which makes it very difficult to, like, imagine any kind of future and, like, find the will to carry on if you think that, like, all the color has run out of the world permanently. Very fucking scary, and it happened for like no real cognitive reason. That sucks. But guess what? I did stick it out, and at the end of it I was like, damn, I thought I would never feel better, and now I do. Unfortunately, I was ricocheting back into another major manic episode, and I did that for a few years. But what I figured out was, like I just said, every moment is temporary, and when you're feeling really down, it can feel like it's going to last forever, but it won't. It just won't. So when you recognize this, the difficult times are ever so slightly easier to endure, and it's also easier to appreciate the happy times and recognize them for the precious things that they really are. It should be savored and appreciated. That was the punchline of my rock opera, And the other thing that I am glad about, as far as like moving past that horrible first major depressive episode, the greatest trial of my life thus far, was that I worked during that time. You know what I mean? We had an album to make and a tour to support it, and as low as I was, I just couldn't bear to let everybody down. The record label, the guys in the band, our producer, all these people had put aside the time and made the effort to make this album and subsequent tour happen. And, even though I had no interest in doing any of that. Like, I don't know if it was my pride or, my respect for them and their time, but I just did it anyway, and it wasn't very fun, and I'm not crazy about it. My performance on the album and my performance on the tour was awful. But I shudder to think about what might have happened if I said, well, I've got nothing to do, so I'm just going to sink into the couch forever and never get up. Like, if I didn't have something I had to get up for, I fear that, I hate to think about what might have happened. So thank God for my rock star job, because it really pulled my fat out of the fire that time. Phew. This is not to say, like, we see more and more people are saying, like, I got to cancel my tour for mental health reasons. And I respect that. I would certainly never put that down in any capacity. If that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. But for me personally, and I couldn't be the only person that feels this way, I know that, having something to do, having obligations is a positive thing for me as far as getting through the bad times.
Yeah.
And you got to just get through them. Like, there's no shortcut to do it. You just got to put the time in. And for me personally, nobody else in the world necessarily, but for me, being able to fill that time with something ever so slightly constructive is, to me, I think that's more effective for me than filling that time with staring at the ceiling and wishing I was dead. I made plenty of time for that, don't worry, but I also did the record and the tour. Fucking, I know that he's a problematic guy, but Lars von Trier, when he was making the movie Antichrist, he was in really rough shape. And he said, like, man, I was so down and out during the time making that movie. Like, a lot of days I thought I wouldn't even make it to the set, but I did. I did make it to the set. And if it weren't for me having to make that movie and please my investors and respect the time of my cast and crew, like, maybe I never would have come out of that time. Lars von Trier, maybe he's a jerk. Lou Reed certainly was, but I do agree with him about the value of having something constructive on your schedule when you're having your difficult seasons. Yep, that's what happened to me.
I mean, it sounds like also your parents were pretty understanding about your neurodiversity.
My position on the neurodiversity spectrum. Yeah.
I think that's a better way to put it. Yes, but do you know what I mean? Like, it seems like you had an understanding family that was trying to help figure things out.
Very loving and reasonably progressive about that stuff. Yeah, I did. So what? It's great.
That's good. That's a good thing. I'm just saying that, like, because I'm trying to think about like, I don't know if this was what your childhood was like, but I'm like, oh, was it, if you're going to therapy a lot and you're on Ritalin, like, are they poking and prodding in some, not your parents, but like, are like therapists poking and prodding? Like,
I've accused them of exactly that in some of my lyrics. Yeah. It's at times it did feel like, they didn't really know what was going on with me. So they kind of just popped the hood and started pulling wires, hoping that they would pull the one that was the problem. And if they had to pull the one that brought the good things into my life, then so be it. I was fearful at times that, like, because so much of my most celebrated creative moments have been during my manic episodes, conceptualizing these rock operas and these Civil War concept albums and whatnot. It's when I've had a lot of my big ideas. I was fearful at times that, if I didn't have an episode again, would I ever come up with a big idea? But that's a lot of bullshit. That's something that's one of the ways that we fetishize these troubled artists. I mean, there's something to it, but like, you can't. That's no good. That's not a good enough excuse to manufacture an episode the way that I have sometimes done.
I tend to think of creativity as a skill, and so the more you exercise it, the better. The more expansive your ideas are. Yeah, I'd say that's so. So yes, you might be talking about craft a little bit, but no, I just mean like imagination, like thinking, like being able to come up with these big ideas. Because I've always I've been jealous of like Dave Berman. I was extremely. No one's death, no celebrity's death has ever really affected me.
Never.
except for Dave Berman.
Yeah, that was one of the more traumatic ones for me too.
It crushed me
It was
because because his brain worked in such a way that I could never get my brain to work. I could never put myself in his neural shoes.
What do you mean as far as like the discipline that he applied to being a writer and treating writing as though it were his day job?
In terms of creativity, in terms of like thinking of the world and the way he thought of the world, the way that he wrote, the way that he, and I think there was a point in his life where he fetishized, because he was a heroin addict at one point, you know, and I think
crackhead, I heard, but same thing.
I think there was this like I think he thought about that in the same way, like where if he didn't have that, he couldn't think of his life. But then he stopped. He was sober and for a while, and he wrote
not
things,
smoking crack in any case. I think he continued to drink.
But he thought of things in the same way. I think that there is this tendency to like, if your brain works in a certain way and you can exercise that, you can exercise your creativity. You can maximize the way your brain works in a creative direction and keep working on it. I mean this is separate from craft.
Right.
I mean this as
it's like any other muscle. They all need to be exercised, right?
Yeah. That you can, that it's not the like Ritalin, it's not the heroin, it's not this stuff. It is, but there is a fear there.
Yeah.
I get that.
These are definitely fear-based decisions. Fear of your own inadequacy, fear of dealing with reality. But I'll tell you, the death of David Berman really bummed me out, especially because, like, I could, you know, like we were talking about with Weird Al versus Motley Crue earlier, I could relate to him like a lot more than I could to say like David Bowie or like Prince or something. Not that those people aren't great, but like I felt like David Berman had something more similar to my own job. And obviously, like any other 34-year-old guitar slinger, I'm fearful about what the future looks like for me, wondering if I can maintain my relevancy or, you know, continue to work at the high standard of excellence that I've set for myself.
Yeah.
And he did, you know, and he, you know, at the age of 52 or whatever it was, you know, put out what, you know, I think could arguably, you know, be called, you know, if not his best record, like right up there with any of them. And he was justly praised for it. And he was getting the gold watch that every 34-year-old rocker dreams of getting when they're 52. And it was one of those moments, one of those rare moments in life where you say, holy fucking shit. Like, this guy stuck it out. He paid his dues for decades and decades. And he didn't even have to compromise his integrity, and now he's the king of the world. Isn't that something? This is like when the Purple Mountains album was getting rolled out.
Yeah.
And he totally railroaded the media and just turned every newspaper into, you know, praise hymnal about the virtues of this David Berman guy. Got everything that you'd think you could want, but it didn't make him happy, did it? That's terrifying to a guy like me, because I'm out here like trying to get everything I think I want, and what if it doesn't make it all better? What do you do then? David Berman came up with something to do, but not, you know, that was fucked up. That sucked. What a drag. Like, what a whack ending to that once inspiring story. Used to be like, this was going to be a story that we could point to for decades as, you know, a good piece of evidence why you shouldn't make compromises beyond what is acceptable to your integrity. And instead it's become a terrible cautionary tale. Very sad. Fucking sucks. It's sad when anybody kills themselves, but a certain kind of rock and roll dream got buried with poor Mr. Berman. Fucking sucks.
There's been no one else. I mean, I reconnected with so many friends because his music and his poetry meant so much to us.
Oh, yeah,
and
I was texting everybody after that.
Yeah. The basis of so many of my friendships. Like, I can go trace back how many of my friendships were formed over love of the Silver Jews or love of David Berman. And it is...
and those friendships will endure. They will survive him, so he's still with us in that way. We're still feeling the aftershocks of the great work that he did, even if he himself is not around anymore.
Is there something... Is there anything from your childhood that means as much to you still today?
No, not a thing. Nothing. Of course not. Your emotions could only get more muted. You know what I'm saying? I've played at like fancy festivals and shit. You know what I'm saying? Did I have as much fun as I had at the middle school talent show? Of course not. It wasn't half as thrilling. That's just the way it is. Doesn't mean I don't get a thrill out of it, but obviously the thrill is very much faded now. I still love to rock out, don't get it twisted, but you can only do anything for the first time once. Remember how it felt in high school? Everything seemed so important. You can't live that way. It's not sustainable. It's not scalable.
Well, no, I mean it turns into the person who hangs out at their high school after they've graduated. The person who tries to keep that feeling going.
All right. It's not all right.
But no, I'm just trying to put together you had an emotionally aware family.
Yeah.
You had were they expressive?
Yeah, sure they were. My mother certainly was, and my old man, he's a wonderful, loving guy. Don't get the wrong idea. He was not as much into the feelings game as my mother was, but he's a perfectly lovely man. More of a hard ass than my mom, but somebody had to be a hard ass with me. I was running wild. Would have made a mess everywhere. But yeah. I love my family. I done told you. I'll say it all day. I ain't ashamed. They're great. Family matters. You ever think about the title of that show and how it works on a couple levels? Because it's like family matters. These are matters pertaining to the family.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's also family matters. Family is important. Genius. Best sitcom name, in my opinion. And the theme song is also great.
The theme song is amazing.
They nailed it with that show.
Yeah.
It was my favorite show ever, but Urkel certainly is funny. It was one of those shows that fell off a cliff when they got to the end and they're like, you know what? Maybe the female lead loves Urkel now and is married to him. That's ridiculous.
Is that what happened? I stopped watching after a while.
Spoiler alert. That was very late into the show's run. But I would level the same criticism at Frasier when they say, let's just get Niles and Daphne married. All the the attention was the cornerstone of what made the show so great. And it sucks. Niles is a nerd. Daphne is hot. It doesn't make any sense. They both talk with a British accent, and only one of them is British.
No, I mean, I asked that just because, I'm just trying to think about your childhood a little bit, and just so besides being poked and prodded by therapists, you also you do have, it seems a place you can go that's kind of safe, where your parents are very expressive and open.
Yeah. And they're always very supportive of my creative pursuits and stuff and gave me a lot of love. It's great. It's a great blessing, my family. Thank the universe for them every day.
You're not just growing up
haven't called mom and dad since I've been out on this trip I'm doing. I should really probably call them up.
I should call my parents.
Let them know I'm thinking about them.
But it seems like you weren't you could have easily grown up just feeling like a science experiment.
I mean, I've felt that way at times. This is another one of the big themes of my rock opera, particularly the first and second acts of it. It could have been way worse. Like we were saying before, there are plenty of people that were worse off than me, and you don't have to look too far to find them. But that doesn't mean that my personal pain and suffering was invalid necessarily. Like we were saying before, we got to validate ourselves a little bit once in a while. That doesn't mean we need to be complete narcissists and think that the entire world revolves around us, which I have also done at times. You don't write a 93-minute rock opera about the bipolar experience if you don't think your feelings are pretty fucking important, can I tell you?
I mean, when you first started playing music...
Very narcissistic choice.
Was there
I'm also a Leo.
Was there something about music that was that was somehow a way to, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to think of like, was it a refuge in some way? That's a dumb way of putting it. But like,
well, yeah, I would retreat from my boring and dissatisfying suburban teenage life, and I would fucking rock out in my room with the cans on. That's what we in the music industry call headphones, all you listeners at home. Many of you are probably wearing cans right now. I myself am not. But sure, and like this is another part of the reason why I continue to carry on performing my public service, such as it is that back in those days and for many, many years after, even right now, I could get validation from all sorts of different kinds of art, but music in particular at this time. Validation that I wasn't otherwise getting. And like we said, this is a service that I try to offer to my audience. And I think of that in part as a way to, pay the debt to all those artists who came before me that made my life slightly more tolerable and tenable and helped keep gas in the tank for me, But like the comic books kind of did that too prior to that. Art, I love the arts. I'm an artist. It's pretty cool that that's my job. I'm lucky.
I mean, outside of music, like in your regular life, is it difficult to be open and emotional?
No. Is it difficult?
I mean, it's difficult for. I asked that. It's difficult for me. It really is.
Sure. I mean, it's difficult for lots of people, and like you say, much like you were talking about with your creative muscles, your open-hearted muscle, your emotional transparency muscle also needs to be exercised. But like I've been exercising it hard for a long time, so it's nothing to me. And I have deep, revealing conversations with complete strangers on a nightly basis. I meet these people at the shows, and I end up knowing more about them than their best friend. Some of them. People feel like they can talk to me. They know me through my art, and they love me for the way that I validated and articulated their deepest, oftentimes darkest secrets and feelings.
Yeah.
That's my job, literally. And I'll tell you something else, considering what we said before about how the thrill and the glory of the spotlight could only ever fade with age, the joy of validating people and being validated by them in return does not fade. In fact, it grows richer every year, and it is the number one reason why I carry on doing this fucking insane thing that I'm doing. This rock and roll thing. Man, I could have gone to such fancy grad schools.
Would you have been happy though?
No.
Yeah.
Hell no, I wouldn't have been happy. That would have been a total disaster had I done that. So like I said, it's all good. I'm a lucky guy. But it is true, like the public service element, which I recognize is extremely modest, it really is the thing that keeps me out here year after year. And, if people stopped coming to the show and telling me how important it was for them when I validated and articulated their secret feelings, like if they one day didn't do that anymore, then I probably wouldn't do it anymore either. I still get a kick out of being on stage. Don't get the wrong idea, but like it's the other thing, more meaningful. And I'll tell you, like even on the first day of this tour, like we were pulling up to the show in Pittsburgh, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like the van's already breaking down. My freaking amplifier exploded. Like, why am I doing this? This is so fucking stupid. I barely even make money doing this shit. And I was like, man, this is the first day of the tour. And I'm like, I got to get out of this fucking business. This is so dumb. This is the last time I'm ever doing this. And wouldn't you know it, like I hung out in the parking lot for 2 minutes, and two middle-aged dudes approached me and told me how much I rock and how much they love it. And I was like, oh yeah, that's why. I love to meet the people. That gets better all the time. And now that I've successfully extricated Titus Andronicus from any kind of scene, you know what I mean? Any kind of ill-fitting context into which we might be thrust, miscontextualized, I'm feeling more and more that, like, if our audience perhaps is smaller, at least I know that basically everybody in the audience has got some kind of deep emotional connection to the music in some capacity. You don't go to a Titus Andronicus concert anymore to score cool points. And this kind of shit, like you don't, but like when we were a younger band and like we were getting all these awesome reviews on the internet and shit, and people thought that we were like some kind of punk rock band, people would show up because they're just like, this is something to do. Like I'm part of some kind of cool thing if I go to this event, and I basically like don't really give a shit about what the art is. The substance of the art, barely crosses my mind. It's just like, or I'm part of like a punk. I think I'm part of like the punk scene. So, there's like 100 or 200 bands that like, we recognize as being part of that scene. And so, whenever they come to town, me and my knucklehead friends are going to go over there and make a mess just because, we think we're supposed to. Titus Andronicus used to be that way. And thank God, not anymore. But that may have hurt my bottom line, but I had to do it to save my soul. So I don't like I like to create my own context.
Yeah.
I don't like when people have these expectations of me based on shit that doesn't have anything to do with me. Fucking annoying. Gets me grumpy.
Well, that's what I used to be a music critic, and I realized after a while, like,
you better have never written a bad review of one of my records.
I did not.
If I find out you did, you're in such trouble.
I stopped writing music reviews before you even existed.
Okay, phew.
But like, I remember. Well, no, I also stopped. Like, I was writing in. The internet existed when I was writing, and I stopped writing like it sounds like X, Y, or Z because I'm like, you can just listen to the fucking music.
Yes.
You don't need me to write what it sounds like. So I was writing more of like cultural context kinds of things.
Right, which is more and more common every year, right?
Yeah.
Why it matters, what it means, and why it matters.
Well, not even that. Just like what is going on? Like, how does it fit into like I remember like writing like a review of a Destroyer album, and I'm like,
love that guy. We were just hanging out with him in Walla Walla, Washington a couple weeks ago.
Dan Bear is one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's the man. He's a nice guy. Down to earth and approachable.
Yeah. I was writing it as like, I said, oh, this is kind of a reaction to his last album. Like he did this in his last album, and he's like, and it feels like he's reacting to what he just did in this new one.
I've had that accusation leveled at me too.
It's not an accusation. It's like a dialectic.
It's an observation, I guess.
Yeah, it's more of like it's kind of a creative dialectic because I do it all the time when I'm writing. I just wrote X script, or I made this pilot or something like that, and I'm like, oh, I see. Now I'm kind of like pushing against that. And in pushing against that, I've created this new thing.
Why are you pushing against it? Because with some distance, you recognize its flaws. Not that your work has flaws. Your work is perfect.
No, it has plenty of flaws. No, but just like
does.
You've done like, here's a dumb example. All right. I've been doing this show for almost 10 years, and it's,
It's podcast?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. That's like almost as long as podcasts have been around.
Yeah.
Wow, congrats.
Thank you.
You're not one of those posers that jumped on the bandwagon.
No.
Damn.
It's
much respect.
As you've seen, it's a pretty serious show. So like when I wanted to do something fun and silly, my friend and I created a podcast that was and a live show at UCB back in New York that was a game show, a very silly game show. And in some way it was a reaction to be like, I don't want to do another very serious thing. I'd like to do something that's awesome, that's kind of silly.
Yeah, well, that's perfectly fine, and that's the prerogative of the artist. But I don't think that you should necessarily like some of these critics, like they, as much as they're reviewing the piece of art, they're really like reviewing their expectations of it.
Well, that's the thing I didn't like to do. That's the thing.
I hate it.
Because you're no longer reviewing the album. You're reviewing what you wanted the album to do.
Right, and you're also trying to write the definitive take on this particular artist's narrative.
But that's the thing. That's the thing that I like New Weird America. If you actually look at, which was like kind of like the weird folk stuff that was happening in the early 2000s,
what's that, like Joanna Newsom?
Yeah, kind of like that. But it's also like a lot of like the weirder stuff like that was happening in like Vermont.
If you say so.
MV plus EE, stuff like that. Okay. But like that was not they weren't a scene. Some some writer in Wire called it New Weird America, grouped a bunch of disparate bands together and said, this is now a new genre, or this is a new like trend,
thereby doing a great disservice to all those artists whose work probably should have been evaluated on its own merits, not on how accurately it affirmed the preconceptions of the listener as to what weird new American music was supposed to sound like, right?
So I understand where you're coming from, where you're like saying
furious.
like you want to create your own context, because the other version of the context is forced upon you by a writer somewhere.
I hate that. What do they don't fucking know shit anyway. I mean, some of them do.
But I mean, not to get too...
I'm the artist. Like, I'm supposed to be the one to create the narrative.
Yeah. Not to be too, like, armchair psychology about it, but, like, I mean, it's the same kind of thing you were dealing with when you were a kid, right? Where you were having some people...
I wanted to have agency over my own mind, but it was denied.
Yeah.
In much the same way I'm denied all the agency that I want now to have in terms of my career. Sucks.
Yeah, it's extremely frustrating.
Yeah, it makes me so mad.
Yeah.
It gets me livid. But whatever. I got rid of a bunch of looky-loos, you know what I'm saying? So that I don't have to worry about their expectations anymore. You know, if you stop worrying about the expectations of the audience, the people that don't really trust you and are going to force their expectations on you are eventually going to just go away. Like, there was this person on Twitter today who had the audacity to @ me in some tweet about, should I go to the Titus Andronicus concert tonight even though I only liked their first 2 albums? And there was like a little thing to like vote yes or no. And to this person I replied, please do not come. Because I have no interest in the support of those people. Like that support is worthless to me. Like, yeah, maybe this person will throw down $15 and maybe that'll juice my bottom line the littlest bit, but like, you know, like you can't even be like the trendy cool thing for that long, and like to try to maintain that is a fool's errand, you know. And furthermore, like, you know, to be like on the list of somebody's 50 bands or 50 favorite bands or whatever, their support is not all that meaningful. To be somebody's number 1 favorite band, now that's something to strive for. And I often have used the metaphor, I don't know if it's a metaphor or not, but I believe that, you know, I probably won't be able to get 100,000 people to give me $1. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But maybe I could get 1,000 people to each give me $100. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Same 100 stacks I'm going to be sitting on at the end of it. And, you know, I think that, like, I look at a small Titus Andronicus audience, such as the one we had last night in San Luis Obispo, which is probably about 12 people in a huge cavernous room. I could look at them and be like, man, we had 20 times this many people in San Francisco. Or like, that's a bad example. I could look at my 12-person audience and say like, oh man, shitty band XYZ that I can't stand is playing down the street and they got, you know, 1,200 people or something like that. But it could be that piece of shit band is just the flavor of the month, and those people are just there to, like we said, make the scene, and they don't really have a deep emotional connection to the music. Maybe they do, but perhaps some of them don't. And like, I could feel reasonably confident that all 12 people in San Luis Obispo did have some kind of deep emotional connection to the music. Except the dude I met after the show who said he'd never heard of us before. He liked it, though. He's got an emotional connection to it now, or he's on his way to. So I think that, you know, ultimately, like, even if our audience is getting smaller, I think we're keeping it. If anything, we're on an upward trajectory as far as net appreciation. Not unlike Carly Rae Jepsen, for example, you know, because like this Carly Rae Jepsen might not be as famous as Ariana Grande, let's say. Maybe she's 10% as famous, but perhaps like her devotees love her 10 times as much as Ariana Grande's biggest fans love her. Perhaps that's not true. Net appreciation. That's what I'm trying to elevate. Quality, not quantity, of the people that love me.
Patrick,
I'm greedy.
Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you.
How do you feel? Good, bad, neutral, tired?
I should eat something soon.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming over.
And don't forget to tune in next week for the next great episode of Beginnings with your host, Andy.
And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye.